The Holy Gospel according to Matthew, the 9th chapter. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax collection station. And Jesus said to Matthew, "Follow me." And Matthew got up and followed Jesus. And as Jesus sat at dinner in the house, many tax collectors and sinners came and were sitting with Jesus and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" But when Jesus heard this, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." While Jesus was saying these things, suddenly a leader came in and knelt before him, saying, "My daughter has just died, but come and lay your hand on her, and she will live." And Jesus got up and followed him with his disciples. Then suddenly a woman who had been suffering from a flow of blood for 12 years came up behind Jesus and touched the fringe of his cloak. For she was saying to herself, "If I only touch his cloak, I will be well." Jesus turned, and seeing her face, he said, "Take heart, daughter. Your faith has made you well." And the woman was made well from that moment. When Jesus came to the leader's house and saw the flute players and the crowd making a commotion, he said, "Go away, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. But when the crowd had been put outside, Jesus went in and took her by the hand, and the girl got up. And the report of this spread through all of that district. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
So do we have any softball or baseball fans out there? 1, 2. Y'all are too afraid. Okay, a couple more hands. All right. Y'all are so afraid to put your hands up. So let me ask those 4 of you, how many outs are in an inning? Okay. I guess technically 6 in an inning, but 3 per team, right? Each inning. I say this like I know sports. Well, as you, I'm sure, know, we are in the throes of baseball and softball seasons, both professionally and in youth sports. Both Charlotte and Isaac, along with, I know many of you all, are in your teams. You're playing you're getting close to tournaments because we're nearing the end of these seasons, right? So the other day, as we were leaving one of Isaac's game in particular, we were getting in the car, and Isaac said, "Why did the other team get 8 outs in that inning?" I mean, that's a good question, right? Because how many outs does one team get in an inning? 3, right? But he was correct. During the last inning of their game, the other team ended up with, I think it was 7 or 8 outs before the game was over. Fire the umps. It's always the umpire's fault, right? I don't know what they were thinking. Well, in this first and second grade league, our team has a lot of older second graders, while this team we were playing seemed to have a lot of younger first graders. So while our kids were launching these hits out into the outfield, they were falling down and nearly hitting their team members who were picking flowers and playing in the dirt. Don't laugh too much. We've all been those players. So this game did not last near as long as it was scheduled, because I think there's a name for that thing where when you get so many runs in an inning, you automatically switch sides. And then if you if you get so far ahead of the other team, the game comes to an end. What's that called? Mercy rule? Run rule maybe too, but so because of the mercy rule, their game ended fairly quickly. But the other team had not made it through their lineup of batters, even a second time. So at the very end of the game, our team, the coaches, the umps, let the other team go through the rest of their lineup. They made sure all the kids on the other team had a chance to get up to bat at least one more time, which led to our team being out in the field for 8 outs. And the person who was keeping score was freaking out because there are not enough spaces for 8 outs in this inning. And then here's the thing. Believe it or not, there were not parents on the sidelines. Is it a sideline in baseball? I don't know. On the side of the field, there were not parents over there yelling at the umpires and at the coaches saying, "Hey, there's not 8 outs in an inning. What are you doing?" Because they're kids, right? We're a little more grace-filled when it comes to kids. A little more. And then we have these rules in place, the mercy rules, to keep things from getting out of hand, to give everyone an opportunity, to give everybody a chance. And that's great. Because as we get older, right, we start to become a little less grace-filled about some of these things, don't we? Which I think is a tale as old as time. So what did we hear this morning? As Jesus sat at dinner in the house, many tax collectors and sinners came, and they were sitting with Jesus and his disciples. And when the Pharisees saw this, they said to those disciples, "Why in the world is your teacher eating with them, with tax collectors, with sinners?" So I was recently talking with a pastor who was telling me the story of how he was interviewing at a congregation way back when, and he said the church asked him, the church said, "We've been having a problem with homeless people coming in when the church doors are open on a Sunday morning, and they sit around and they drink coffee. So what would you do to help us fix this?" And so he told me that he told this church, he said, "Well, I would say we should buy bigger coffee pots and maybe get some more couches." He didn't get the call, by the way. Can you imagine that? I think we can imagine that, though, right? We're not too surprised when the Pharisees, when these religious leaders are asking Jesus here in the gospel, why is Jesus eating with them? Tax collectors and sinners and those people, oh my. And then we're not too surprised when churches say, how do we get rid of those homeless people, those outcasts, and those others who are not like us? They're kind of bothering us. They're drinking all our coffee. We didn't budget for this much coffee. What are we going to do? Why are you letting that team get 8 outs? We only got 3 outs. Why did they get 8? Okay, well, I guess we got enough runs to make it switch sides because of that mercy rule, so we got that. But still, they should get 8 outs. What did Jesus say to the Pharisees? He said, "Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. I desire mercy, not rules or traditions or your comfort or your understanding. Mercy." He says, "For I have not come to call the righteous and those who are well, but I've come for the sinners and the ones who are sick, the ones who are hurting." And I just wonder, why do we get so offended by God's mercy? So not to keep bouncing around the story here, but think about how the story started. Jesus was walking along and he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax collection station. And Jesus said, "Follow me." And Matthew followed. Now, for one thing, this fact that Jesus simply says, "Follow me," and Matthew gets up and goes, it's fairly mind-blowing, but I guess that's how a lot of these call stories work, where the disciples just go. They're so drawn to Jesus, to his call, to to who he is, I guess, that there's not much argument or hesitation. So for all of those disciples, there's that. But Matthew really was one of the last disciples to be called here in this gospel. So think about what the other disciples were thinking about this. A lot of the other disciples were fishermen or guys from other fields and trades. How do you think they felt about tax collectors? I mean, there's probably a pretty good chance that tax collectors were staked out on the side of the roads where these fishermen and all these others would be taking their goods to the market to sell. And as they passed by those tax collectors, they would be forced to pay that government tax on all of those things, but probably, as we've kind of heard over the times, those tax collectors probably pocketed some extra of that while they were at it. So tax collectors were pretty well despised by a lot of people in those days. So again, how do you think the other disciples were feeling when they watched Jesus invite a tax collector into their group? Wait, you're inviting him to come with us? You know what he does for a living, right? Well, I've not come to call the righteous, but rather sinners. And the disciples are thinking, did Jesus just call us sinners? But this is what Jesus does, right? He upsets the apple cart. He makes us uncomfortable. He calls us into the unknown. He does exactly what the world says we shouldn't do. He shows mercy. He touches those whom the world or the law deems unclean, whether it's a bleeding woman or a corpse or those said to be untouchable. He goes and touches and heals and brings life. He provides a seat at the table to those who would never imagine being invited. So maybe we struggle with this idea of mercy because it's difficult and offensive to our sensibilities. Mercy is about showing love and forgiveness and compassion when those things are anything but deserved. But again, like I was telling the kids this morning, doesn't God do that with us? Offers us this forgiveness and love that we would believe belongs to us? But again, I think there's times when we struggle with that too because we want to feel like we've earned it and we deserve it and like that God gives it to us because of who we are. And I think because of that, we feel like everyone else needs to earn it too. So maybe those Pharisees were offended by Jesus eating with tax collectors and sinners because the Pharisees wondered why they didn't get this invitation. Hey, I deserve a seat at that table. I've earned it more than they have. But just like so much of what God does, just because someone else has a seat at that table doesn't mean that there's not a seat for us too. It's not like a cafeteria table at school or at work where there are only so many seats. And if someone else is invited into that group, well, that means maybe someone there might lose a seat. It doesn't work like that with God. Jesus multiplies seats. There are no limits to God's mercy. So for us here in this new church season, as we start down this path of journeying with Jesus through his life and ministry, I think we're called to see how he lives in this different way. And I think today especially we're called to see how we might be called to show mercy. I think we're called to question where our rules and our traditions and our biases get in the way of offering mercy to others. And I think we're called to look around and see those whom we'd rather look down upon as ones who should actually be sitting at the table with us, because Jesus has already invited them to his table. That is God's mercy. Thanks be to God. Amen.